In the southern Italian area of Puglia, the cliffs of the Gargano Peninsula extend out in the Adriatic Ocean, offer stunning view. Its beaches are magnetically for tourists, but the region is as well a key agriculture center. Italy's machine tomatoes are sold out about the planet, and on a tertiary of them are manufactured there, in the provincial of Foggia. But far of its visitor-packed beaches, the area is dispersed in homemade camps, named local as ghettos, how are household to a immigrant labor how seedling and harvests its cereal. Italy's largest labor association, CGIL, estimates how up to 12,000 migrants dwell in these camps in miserable facility. In several of these places, migrants tell, the absence of main services such as fleeing water supply, power, or waste management removal can include deadly ensuing consequences. Italian print accountable how 4 persons migrants include dead in such a camp's fare in the recent year, 1 of overcooling, 3 in fires. These homemade communities are household to both of legislative and not documentary migrants of all above the planet. They involve EU countrymen, frequently of Romania and Bulgaria, Afghans and Pakistanis, but largest residents are youthful men of Africa. They go there to discover job as day laborers. Yet, onto labor unions and the domestic and provincial by the government, lot are operated, constrained to job length several hours and making far under the minimal wages. Work for the gangmasters while regional farmers requirement to discover inexpensive, easily accessible brush pickers, quite rather than utilizing them immediately, they substantially rotate to middlemen named as caporali, gangmasters. These gangmasters get a stake of the worker's salary and frequently accusation them for transportation to the fields, as so as the meal and water supply they get time where. Raffaele Falcone is a legislative specialist who planned for CGIL, Italy's largest labor association. He gives an sample of how it planned. A big landlord in the region uses a foreman of Morocco, who has 10 vans and employs drivers of the ghetto to every 300 kilogram box of tomatoes imbued by the workers. The landlord gives €5 to an Italian medium man who deals in the foreman. Following they both of get his cut off, the employee gets €3, $2.50. Migrants are loaded €5 for transportation. Occasionally 5 more than for meal. The legislative minimal wages for laborers in the provincial is €53, $62, per date. Work several hours are bounded to 6.5 several hours a date, in a maximal of 3 several hours overtime work per date. For months, Falcone and his associate include been newcomer the camps to persuade migrants to paper the misuse they afflict. He says how with September he has logged 34 comprehensive stories of operation, wherever migrants were found to job by a foreman, in no occupation agreement, and for more than rather than 10 several hours a date. Several cases implicated abuse, one cause why largest workers are too frightened to say of, on to Falcone. Since they dwell in camps wherever law coercion is practically lack, he says, migrants are vulnerable to the retaliations of the gangmasters, who include the force to hunger them for job and damage them constructively. Lifetime in the Lane Ghetto. Ali Muhammad, 19, leftward Mali while he was 16. Now he lives in a camping of immigrant workers how has grown up following to Borgo Mezzanun, a village of 500 residents. There, a decommissioned war aeroport has grown up in a homemade society done of glass, tents and shacks, named as the Lane Ghetto. Various sections of the Lane Army various communities, in his own churches, mosques, angle shops, butchers and though nightclubs. Muhammad says how for the year he consumable in Libya on his way to Italy, he was concluded and exhausted by militias in Tripoli before his household shipped him the counterpart of $600 to pay for his produce. But anything angers him more than rather than the treat he acquired in Italy. How can a at first planet nation hold human beings residing love the, he says. Muhammad no much longer toils in the fields, now work as a technician in his camping. Since he doesn't reply to cultivated land bosses, he says he is not frightened to say of the misuse he observed for the brief period he consumable in farming. I include seen my brothers break his backs by the sun for 12 several hours, and later creature rejected his wages, he says. If they complained, the Italian landlord would hit them upwards. Break the framework. The governor of Puglia, Michele Emiliano, named on business community to break down the foreman framework by just utilizing migrants juridically. The new law tool how such found to be employing workers via gangmasters who utilize laborers can person up to 8 years in jail. And the law giving victims of labor operation the identical protect and asset accessible to victims of sex trade, such as accessing to vocational learning opportunities. In July, in a milestone against slavery instance in Lecce, at the southern end of Puglia, social prosecutorial derived hard prison sentences for 8 gangmasters and 3 landowners. Court initiatives on a compared scope refuge been seen in Foggia. But several landowners there sense how the new against exploitation law targets them unjustly. They say they need a versatile labor, and since they don't say the tongue or know the civilization of his immigrant laborers, the top way of employing them is via middlemen. Currently we are purified as gangmasters, protests Enzo Smac, who owns 40 hectares of treated fields in Puglia and says he pays his workers equitable wages. Reason don't the authorities' attention on all the criminality and prostitute how goes on in the ghettos, he says. Smac feels how middle-sized landowners love oneself are victims of the retailer segment, that he says has managed downward prices for tomatoes, outgoing immigrant workers sensitive to operation. The social attorney for Foggia, Francesca Peroli, told, labor operation originates in the lack of job centers and in the large poverty reduction of the provincial, that is managed by the prices done by the retailer segment. Peroli now heads a again set problem strength devoted to fight the foreman framework. She says where will be a crackdown following springtime, while the harvesting begins. Same law now allows us to grab earth, that is the largest efficient constraining versus the kind of criminality, she told. Emiliano says how Italy's interior design secretary done a private obligation to ensure eyewitness protect to both of companies and workers who go striker to paper misuse. Camping evictions. The provincial by the government says it is take a hard position on the immigrant camps. Emiliano describes these places as creature controllable by penal organizations devoted to prostitute, narcotic behavior and caporali. Residents include been evicted of several camps and Emiliano says more than evictions are inevitable. He says how evicted migrants can go to structures stipulated by the provincial by the government, in complementary accessing to meal and sanitary means, wherever they will be complementary of the operation of gangmasters. Just 1,000 beds are now accessible at these provincial admission centers, but the authority is planner to construct more than by the following harvest time of year. As winter approaches, less laborers are necessary in the fields, several emigrate future southward, to harvesting oranges, several go to the industry cities of the polar. Within the camps, the thousands who remain be more than dependent on the illicit economics. Makeshift heater system growth. The hazard of fires, but the common cold is a more than inevitable risk. On December 16, a team of migrants of the ghettos will march in Rome to consumer demand an end to labor operation, and to vote his law to secure and proper habitation. They trust how before workers organize, real win very changing. One of his slogans is, "Thou requested personnel, you found men."